Hello, everyone, and welcome. In today's session, we're going to take a look at customer engagement automation and how messaging bots and agents work very effectively together in improving customer communications. As you all know, we're currently working in some really uncertain times, and the dramatic shift from on-site to remote working for agents has challenged many companies, but in particular those who are engaging with lots of customer interactions and engagements. And we have found that working with our clients, that automation has really come to the fore and really helped them better manage their customer conversation flows, reduce pressure on their agents, and ensuring that customers feel confident in support and services that they're delivering. So today we're going to take a deeper and a closer look into just how easy it is to add customer automation into your customer communication processes. So before we get started, as I normally do, I'll quickly run through some of the house rules. Don't forget, if you would like to ask a question, simply use your question pane on your control panel. Just pop in the question and we will do our very best to answer all the questions by the end of today's sessions. But don't worry, if we don't manage to get to all of them, we'll contact you directly with the response afterwards. So before we get started now, just let me introduce you to our three presenters today. We have Mark Opperman, Graham Bragg and Delia Jones from Webio, who I often refer to as our conversational messaging gurus. They have been implementing customer communication solutions for many years and have a wealth of experience in delivering some great results for many of our clients. So good morning, Delia, Mark and Graham. How are you?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Very well, thank you.
Morning, Anne-Marie. How you doing? Thank you, Anne-Marie, and I think that set us up perfectly for what we want to talk about today. And really, I think what we're going to talk about is when we're talking with our clients about automation, I think there's a perception a lot of times that this is something that's really difficult to achieve and it takes a lot of work and what have you. And more times than not, Graham, it's fair to say that actually when we get involved with customers and give advice and guidance, they actually are normally quite surprised how quickly you can move down an automation route. And I'm going to say without massive heavy lifting, there is work involved, but invariably it's not as much as people think.
No, it's very true, Mark. It's one of the biggest things I get actually when we've done the first part of the implementation and the go live has happened, was just how quick it's got moving and how quick it actually got delivered, and secondly how quickly the results start to come in as well. It's you'll see that as we go through the presentation later on today, actually how simple and quick and easy it is to build these things and get going.
Yeah, and really sort of talking about that. Look, we work with a lot of different clients and from a lot of different industries. If I was to break them down, retail, financial services, utilities, most of what we do is all around the credit and collections journey. And it has been, as Anne-Marie said, it's been incredibly difficult time over the past number of weeks. And a lot of changes have been forced on companies that, quite frankly, they haven't planned for. And we're going to touch on that and how automation is just one element of what's helped. But as I said, this is all based on the work that we're doing with our clients. We have been lucky enough to do some really great work that's been recognized by the wider industry. We've won a number of awards over the past few years. Delighted to get recognized, and hopefully long may that continue. So before we get started, I think actually it's probably right, let's just frame the sort of the Webio solution, just so that we can actually be able to hang the hook into where the automation fits into the whole journey. So Webio, we talk about conversational middleware, and really what we're meaning that is that customers have access to unlimited number of channels at this moment in time. WhatsApp would be a prime example. SMS, Viber, Snapchat, the list goes on and on. You don't need me just to list off hundreds and hundreds of names. There's also the likes of Alexa, Google Home, Google Assistant, so the voice first channels are happening as well. Really what we do is we sit in the middle. As a business, you connect into Webio and you get access to all of these channels. So those conversations can happen over those range of channels. We can hook into your business. We can bring in the digital assets. Where needed, you seamlessly bring the agents in. And this is what we're actually going to see later. And that's the reason I wanted to take 2 moments out to show you what we're, you know, the concepts, and the next part on would be where we're actually going to show you what we're talking about here. But also the ability to add more automation skills to conversations, anything from taking payments, giving refunds. We hook into, I think it's a little over 120 global payment service providers. So, you know, bringing payments into any conversation in any channel is really really easy. And then you look at all the other stuff that can be done, the likes of the automation that we're going to touch on, and that typically would be driven through the Google Dialog Flow engine. So that natural language understanding what the intent is, and then within the Webio, let's say an orchestration layer, guiding that conversation to the next best place. So before we move on and get into the meat, sort of a bit of a recap, if I was to break it down into 3 layers. Layer 1 of Webio is that connectivity and reach. Layer 2, we're really going to home in on the automations and skills. And then the final layer is machine learning, where it's looking to identify what's the most likely outcome of the conversation and guide the conversation to the next best step. We do have other webinars on the machine learning and the propensity X. We're not really going to focus on it today, so would suggest if you want to know more, just have a look at 1 or 2 of our other webinars. So one of the key things, as we touched on it earlier, is about automation being able to deliver a huge amount for your business. And what we've seen is, and actually we've seen a 347% increase over the past month of the number of new conversation bots, applications that our customers have built to be able to reach out to their customers and manage the new type of conversations that they're having. Now, that's a huge number and it's a huge increase. Really, the whole idea of what we would do is that customers are able to build your own applications. It's all self-build. We're not actually building it for you. Now, we give you guidance and what have you, but all of this can be built within the Webio platform, as we're going to see. So it has allowed businesses really to tap into, and to be frank, a lot have been nearly forced down this route. And the value, I think it's really coming to the fore of digital conversations when compared with voice. And Graham, that's something that we, you know, I know we've talked about a lot over the past number of years, but really over the past month, I think there has been some very significant realizations about sort of what the clear differences are between voice and how companies manage that today and digital messaging. Could you share some of your observations there?
Yeah, no, there really has been. It's been interesting. A lot of the conversations that I've had with clients were actually very early on in this current crisis that we're in. And they've been reviewing what they were doing already regarding their sort of distributed workforce, whether they had shifts going on, people sitting in certain offices. They nearly all used dialers, and the dialer was the main access out to the customers. But it sort of started to play around over the last few months to a year with digital communication through channels such as, you know, WhatsApp and Viber and SMS, as you mentioned, and clearly being our customers, that's been through us. And what they've seen is a big shift of people actually giving better information, getting further down the journey and promising things, and actually those promises sticking through the digital channels, but also the ability that the staff themselves can manage a lot more conversations in one go from wherever they are. They haven't got to be sat at a desk at a certain number connected to a switchboard. They can be sat at home. They can be sat in the northern office, the southern office, wherever it may be, and actually have those same conversations with a simple login to a browser. And because the nature of the digital messaging as well is not an instant response, because, you know, you're speaking to somebody over the phone and you ask a question, you expect an instant response, therefore it's one-to-one. With the digital side of it, I know we've mentioned it a number of times, but we're seeing it grow higher and higher and higher with the asynchronous nature of it, where, you know, people will send a message in, they're happy to wait a couple of minutes or more for that response. So an agent can have 5, 8, 10, and the good agents, when they've been doing this for a while, and the agents we've been working with for over a year now, we're seeing sort of a dozen or more conversations being handled at the same time. So there are huge amounts of wins. And what it's done really is spring forward what people are already thinking and doing more and more through the digital channel. So it's been really beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, and look, obviously the topic that is on everybody's mind is how do they manage those conversations regarding COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever you title you want to put on it. It's a problem for everybody. And what I'm going to do now is to share a conversation flow. It's a generic sample conversation flow, but based on numerous work that we've done with our range of clients to give you an example of what the type of conversations that are happening. Here is a conversation flow that we have built. Delia, could I ask you, I know you would have put together this conversation flow and built the original one just for testing and what have you. Typically, what type of time would you expect? Okay, you're very proficient at this, but building it from scratch, how long are we looking at for a conversation flow like this?
So this one itself was, it was a more complex bot. There's a lot of different functionality in there, but even something as complex as this, building the agent in Dialogflow, setting up those intent management steps back in the Webio system and ensuring everything works and is tested. To do the build itself, you're looking at around sort of 20 to 30 minutes. To do the testing, obviously there's a lot of different paths through this. So I would put about another extra 90 minutes on to do all those paths, but it is a very quick, you can be turning these around within the day.
Yeah, I think that's the amazing thing here, isn't it? That my first customer came to us with this requirement of saying, look, we need to offer people the ability to pay very easily or to have a payment holiday because their situation had changed that heavily. They've been furloughed or so on. And the first one started off with literally 5 or 6 steps. It was built in 5 or 6 minutes. They tested it. It was working. Very straightforward. Are you having trouble? Is it affected by COVID? Yes, no. Yes or no was read, and so on. Then the next customer wanted something that was hundreds of steps. So what Delia did was she went away and then worked with one of the customers to come up with what was probably the best mid-ground one. And I think the important part is, even though this took sort of an hour to build, 90 minutes to test, this is very repeatable as well. So because this bot has been built, this is generic, the yes-no Dialogflow neural linguistics is already there. For somebody wanting to come on board and put this on, this literally then can be done just in the transfer to you and the testing time. So it's a really, really flexible system that enables you to do things very, very quickly. And of course, each of those wording sections you see there, what it's asking, what it's saying, can be tailored to whatever you need to say within your business as well to meet the compliance that you're trying to get to. And again, that's very simple, as you'll see through the demonstration later on, to do live and change that and test it. Bit of A/B testing, maybe even to see where people are going and getting them further down the journey. So really, really flexible and really, really fast.
Yeah, and I'd like to pick up on that A/B testing. And Delia, this is something that we've seen where, with the best of intentions, you may not get it perfect right from the start. That a certain word may not be correct, or it may be generating a different response than you'd hoped. And that's something that we would always, we'd help and advise you on. And one thing there would be, again, being able to have, and as you will see, set status C19 affected, set status C19 not affected. As you go through the conversation flow, you're doing all the normal things, your date of birth, so that whole identification and verification. In this instance, we're doing 2 steps. It's a date of birth. You obviously already have their phone number, and you're using a postcode. At any stage, if it wasn't to match, and it can match multiple different things, so it's not just one format, it is going to bring it to, in this instance, the DPA failed. You could then have a generic message that would be handled by an agent at a later stage, or it could be dropped into an agent conversation to pick it up. So really, depending on what resource that you have available, that can be organized to suit your resource requirement. But even in this instance here, where you're giving actually, and again, I've just picked sample amounts here, 75, 50, and 33 in this box here. As people are choosing those amounts, they all also can be set at different statuses. So from the point of view of reporting and being able to manage this there is some complexity here, and there's a number of different outcomes and statuses. All of these can be managed correctly into a report. So great that you're actually doing it, but that ability to do this on scale is very easy to do. And as I said, that you can handle any exceptions in a live scenario, or your agents can go back at a later stage. So before we move on, Delia, I know you did say there was a number of iterations. Was there any particular learnings that would be of value to share at this stage about what we've seen, say, on this sample one that we have done?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things, one of the big benefits of using Webio for the clients that have worked with us through this particular situation is that they're getting pulled in a lot of different ways. They haven't always got the time to sit down and think through every route through a bot and what the tone of voice wants to be, and they're not able to give it the attention that they would do normally in a sort of longer, more standard implementation. But the great thing about Webio is because you are able to iterate so quickly, you can get a bot built within sort of minutes rather than hours or days. You can have it on your phone, you can test it to yourself, you can experience what your customers will experience, and that really brings it to life and crystallizes what you want it to say. And at that point then you can jump in and you can make those changes to the wording, and you can make the bot work for you as you need it to do. So really the biggest learning with this is just get your bot built, send it through to your phone, and then iterate. So we've taken some learnings from this already, from these examples that we've been doing with clients. There's a lot of automation now that potentially in the past our clients would have been more comfortable putting that across to their agents. Now they're getting the bots to do it. So it's around automating that as cleverly as possible so that you're not putting extra stress onto your customers to ensure that they are entering things in the exact format or doing things in exactly the right way. It's about minimizing that journey for them while also maintaining your compliance. So you're able to easily get that balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very good point, and that the ability to iterate is something that we can't stress enough. Is super important, and actually getting the correct wording. That sometimes when you type it out, it may look right. When actually, when customers respond, sometimes you will immediately see, we just need to change that slightly, just to guide the conversation to to give it a better experience, or guide it more correctly from a compliance and a customer engagement point of view. What we're going to do at this stage.
Sorry, Mark, I was going to jump in and say the only thing, no problem at all. The only thing I was going to say I'd add there is probably one of the key pieces of this is there's always a failover. We can talk about automation and bots doing most of the heavy lifting and most of the work, which is great. There's always going to be a point where someone will input something very strange, something doesn't make sense, they get lost, they get frustrated. So the whole idea really of having this person sort of hand over to a human agent to get that personal touch to take over is always in there as a failover as well. You'll see that from that diagram. You can see if there is no response, thank you, I'm going to hand you to one of my colleagues. And at that point only will a human agent get hold of that conversation to take over, read it and do it. And that's a key part of it really, is to make sure that the journey the customer's getting never really goes backwards from where it was before. Yes, automate it, but don't put in there sort of hurdles they can fall over at and get stuck at. So having that sort of perfect sort of hand to hand between automation and human is a really key part as well.
Okay, at this stage we're going to now jump to Delia is going to give us a guided tour of how to make a simple bot. We're then going to send just a test message to Graham and myself, and just really show you a number of the things that we've seen here in the conversation flow diagram. We're going to bring to life and show you, the relative ease of being able to do this type of stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. So what I'm going to do now is give you a little quick tour on how bots can be built and developed. So Mark challenged me yesterday and said, we're going to do this webinar for clients, and ideally I'd like you to show them a bot build, but I know it'll probably be too difficult for you to do. But not being one to not like a challenge, I said, don't be daft, Mark. I can build you a bot in 5 minutes, I think was the challenge. So if we start the clock just now, and we'll go for it. Now I have cheated a little bit here. I've already integrated my Dialogflow agent and I've pre-built it, but again, that's sort of a 5-minute task. So just to show you how quickly that is, it's just come in here, add your Dialogflow integration in, give it a description, enter your JSON key, and you're good to go. So to create a bot, you give your bot a name. So I will call this one the challenge bot, and you can choose the channel. So any channel you've got access to in your organizations, you can choose to send it across. So we'll stick with SMS today. You choose
could use
any
WhatsApp or any of the other channels as well if you wanted. Yeah, great.
Yeah, so in
Okay.
this account that I've got here, we've got SMS, we've got Messenger, Viber, WhatsApp, you know, any channel you've got access to, you can use. And then any channel ID you've got set up against your organization, you can choose to send it from that too. So this is just a number. So if you're doing an outbound campaign, this is the field that will store the phone number in and vice versa. Okay, so I'm going to start off quite simply here, and I'm going to initially just set a status against my bot. So I'm going to say, okay, ongoing. So this will mean that as soon as it goes out, it's going to set that status. And the next thing I want to do in this one is send out one of those dialogue flow steps. So it's an intent gathering, and it's going to be looking for a yes, no. So keeping in line with today's theme, I will say hi name, and what I'm doing here is just adding some personalization. So any data you upload against contact, you can bring into your bot. So I'm just going to say here, are you having financial difficulties due to the COVID-19 situation? And then I can select any of the dialogue flow agents that I've got created and set against. So today I'm just going to select a yes, no. And for those of you that aren't really familiar with dialogue flow, it's taking a response from a customer and it's looking for the intent of that. So this is matching against yes and no. And as Graham mentioned earlier, you've also got that default handling there. So I would just save this here, and then for yes, I'm going to say, I'll send back an automatic response saying, sorry to hear that. I will arrange to reduce your payments. Now, obviously, this is a little bit brief. You would normally be going through a few other steps, but just to give you a quick idea. And then for the no's, I'm going to say, glad to hear you are okay. If things change, contact me. So at any point through the bot, you can tag things with statuses, you can move them to queues, you can do all of the admin type tasks. So I'm going to do a move to queue, and I will put this one into the collections queue for one of my agents to pick up if they say yes. I'm also going to close the conversation if they say no. So once I've got my steps built, what I can do now is go and build my route through those steps. So here we've got the dialogue flow intents that it's looking for. So for yes, it's going to step 3. For no, it's going to step 4. And the default fallback in this instance, if I don't understand yes, no, I'm going to pull it straight back into the queue. Now, what most people do here is that you'd have some error handling. So if you don't understand it the first time, you say, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Can you reply again? You can build all of that up. You can also build things up like your date of birth verifications, the postcode matching, all of that stuff.
As you're doing that, Delia, I'd just like to, we're seeing 6 steps in front of us here. The diagram that we showed earlier, I think that was about 29 steps. So as you can see, within a couple of minutes, we've got 6 steps done. So the idea of extending that to 29, it's just doing that a few more times, bringing them all together. So, you know, very quickly, okay, it's a basic one, but to show you how quickly this type of application can be built.
You can also copy the bot. So if you want to make a copy, make changes, you can do that. You can share the bots out to other organizations within your hierarchy as well. So you've got sort of ways of making it work easier for you. So just to show you, we've got the bot built now. It's sending to this field here, and we've got all those steps built. So the next thing now is to send a test through and make sure that works. Okay, so now we've built the bot, we are going to do the campaign. So come and click into campaign, and the first thing I'll do is give my campaign a name. The start and end date are the dates that the campaign will show as available to drop data into. The validity period is how long your bot will remain listening. If you do get a reply after that validity period, the bot will restart from step 1. So what I'm going to do first off is drop in a sample file. And this is a file I created earlier. It contains Mark and Graham's details. And this will just enable me to set up the campaign and make sure that it's going to match my live data, and also to enable me to test that bot and make sure it works. So for control reasons, I can set the time and days that I want to accept data into the system. And then we can see it's got this file name, so it must always match that file name when you import. And now I've got the 3 fields that are in my data. If I need to change the target fields, I can. So that's the name of the field in Webio. But what I'm going to do now is just tell it the type. So the customer ID will be included in reporting, and the name field will show up in the conversation screen. So I've got those 2 tests there. Hopefully you don't mind your numbers being shared with everyone, guys.
Not a problem.
Please ring for any orders over $1 million.
I was going to say, if anyone has license place a large order with us, please go for the UK number that was at the top.
So I've got here the start and end times. That's when do I want to start sending my messages, and what's the latest time I want to start sending them. And then I'm just going to select which bot I want to send and how quickly I want to send it out. So once I'm happy with all of that, I complete this import and schedule. And what I've done effectively now is I've set up a template, and it's a template that will sit there listening until I drop data in. And I can drop data into this template multiple times and it will process it. So if I just do a quick search here for the latest ones, you can see with the little arrow, it means they've been set up in such a way that they'll accept data multiple times. So I've got my check-in screen here, just make sure everything's okay. Then I'm going to drop that test file in, and hopefully this is the proof of the pudding. Did my quick bot build work?
That's just arrived with me, Delia. So,
And I've just got mine as
So
well.
I can click into here. I can see that 2 and 2 have been sent. There's lots of reports that you can go into as well and see how things have worked, how successful the campaign's been at generating conversations and all stuff like that. But if I go into conversations for now, and hopefully the guys will reply.
I've said I haven't, so that means you'd set the conversation up that it would close for me, and it says if things change, contact me.
And on mine, I've got the, sorry to hear that, I will arrange to reduce your payments. So that's all working.
Great, so we can see there Graham's received the message and he's replied. We've got now in the conversation screen, it's been brought into an agent, so I can now reply back to Graham and say, hi Graham. And you can see we've got smart phrases popping up here that's trying to predict what I'm typing and just speeding up that workload. Grammar was awful there, sorry, you are through. In this one, I'm going to validate his date of birth, but obviously you can get the bot to do that as well. So what I'd really like to show you now is just how we got, so from yes, I am having difficulties, and for those of you that are familiar with sort of keyword matching, on a lot of keyword products, it would have failed at that point because the person didn't reply with an exact match. But using Dialogflow, it's able to take all of that and understand that that is a yes response. So if I take you into Dialogflow now, we can see how that's working in Dialogflow and how you're able to train that so it gets continually better. Okay, so in Dialogflow now, and we can see we're in the yes, no agent, and we've got our 2 intents here. So what I can do now is click into the training, and we should be able to see, yeah, there's lots of different requests that have been used with this agent already. So if I click into the no response, which is the last response, then we can see that the no response from Mark that was received was correctly tagged as a no. If it had got that wrong, I could click on the intent and I could change it to a yes. Obviously, in this case, it didn't get it wrong, so we'll leave it as a no. And it's also taken Graham's yes, I'm having difficulties, and it's put that in as a yes as well.
I think the key thing here, isn't it, is you don't actually have to use the exact wording, isn't it, as you were saying there earlier on. And in fact, it doesn't even have to have the exact word in that sentence. So although I put the word yes in there, having something in like I'm having difficulties could also be accepted as a yes, there's a problem here, push it down the yes route. So it's neurolinguistics, and it's very, very powerful.
It is, and generally when clients go live with this, it depends how much training you put in advance, but people will be going live with an accuracy rate of around sort of 55, 65%. With that intensive training in the first couple of days, you'll soon see that get up to about 80%, And then after the first 2 weeks, we would be expecting it in the high, sort of mid to high 90s. So it is very accurate, and especially when it's doing things as simple as yes, no.
Yeah, and I probably would say also, obviously, when we're doing the standard ones like the yes and the no's, or why can't you make your payment, etc., and people have got sort of the circumstance changes and so on, we have quite a good library of standard comments and responses from that anyway to kick these things off at a high level, which is always a good start.
So everything that you do here, Delia, just for the sake of people who are seeing this, say for the first time, that's all now being captured within the Webio conversation flow. So if I was really awkward or just normal by saying something a little bit different than no or yes, if I said it in a very strange way, it's going to be captured here. You put the training in once and then it's replicated forever on in. Is that it's as easy as that?
It is, yeah, it's as easy as that. So typically we would advise that you train each intent with maybe 5 phrases before you go live. And then as part of your user testing, you'll be getting more training in at that point. And then obviously through your first day and week of going live, you'll be getting a lot of responses in there. So it is, once it's in there, it will stay until you want it deleted. I think the other real important thing to point out here is obviously Dialogflow is a Google product. But what you are able to do, because of the way that the integration is built, all of that personal information that you've uploaded against your customers remains within the Webio platform securely. And the only thing that gets passed across to Dialogflow is that unique response from the customer. And even if you have a number of agents set up at different steps, a number of Dialogflow agents set up at different steps, the messages are passed across as individual messages. So there's no link between sort of the first response from a customer and the fourth response from a customer. So that's really important, that your data, the customer data, the personal information, that remains within Webio.
Yeah, very, very important indeed.
Yeah, I just have one last comment, if that's okay. Just again, I've described this to someone a while back, and so what if they don't do one of the 5 phrases you type in? Which was a very valid question, actually. But the whole reason for Dialogflow being neurolinguistics, those 5 phrases actually will give you somewhere around 500 or 600 different types of phrases that it can actually match that to. So it's not looking just for those phrases. It's looking for similar phrases, a combination of the words between those phrases. That it's neurolinguistics, it's AI, it's very clever. So those 5 phrases are giving you hundreds and hundreds of different options, not just the 5 you type in. May sound daft, but I actually got that question, and it actually was a very valid question. So,
and then you always have this default fallback, which is your handling of. So if it does come back with something that the Dialogflow agent doesn't recognise, it will go down the default path. It will manage the customer experience to a very high standard, and then that's something that you can come in and train for next time, so that next time it does understand what to do. And as Graham was saying, each time you train it, it isn't just that exact phrase that's getting trained, it's everything around that phrase.
So thanks, Delia. That was really informative. And I think it demonstrated like it is relatively easy to start to build the bots and the automation. Look, we would love to have a conversation with you. As I said, we work with a whole range of different customers. Some of the metrics that we deliver for them are really brilliant. We're very, very proud of that. So at any stage, if you want to talk about automation that we talked today, or just wider on what we do, info@webio.com. So, Anne-Marie, I will hand it over to you. I see that there has been a number of questions come in. Do you want to take it from there? On myself and Graham, and Delia will handle a question or two for you there, please.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Mark. Yeah, we have had a few questions come in, so let's just jump straight in. The first one here is from Jared. What channels can have the automation on?
I'll grab that one if everyone's happy with that. Basically, any channel that we're working with, which is currently the WhatsApps, the SMSs, the Vibers and messages and those sort of channels, the main ones that are out there for business at the moment. What you saw there, the bot build, can be built against any of those channels. The only changes will be, obviously, the functionality that channel has, such as Messenger will have sliders and carousels and buttons, so therefore they can be built into the bot as well, so you can present those to the customer. SMS obviously is related down to the sort of ASCII characters that it can present, so it's text only, so there are limitations in there. But again, the bots themselves, the understanding that Delia showed there, the intent gathering and the understanding, the listening, and the pushing things to agents and whatever as required, it's the same in every channel that is out there. Any channel we work with, you can do the same things in, just limited to what that channel itself can do functional wise.
Great, thanks. On to the next one here from Karen. Can you use the same bot for different channels?
Yeah, thank you. So you can use the same bot for different channels. The complexity comes when you've got different levels of functionality for different bots, but we can certainly work with you to ensure that you're getting the optimized journey for different channels. You can also quite easily switch within bots to handle different channels. So for instance, if you're in an SMS chatbot and you offer people the option of communicating with you in WhatsApp, you can do that very easily as well.
Super, thank you. Can you explain how the automated agent or bot can get trained to be better? And that one comes in from Bob.
Bob, let me take that. And I think as Delia demonstrated there on the dialogue flow, as you build up the different responses that you're looking and the different intents that you're trying to match against, there are, gosh, people are going to be, they're going to say things in a different way. So it is building up all the time. And as Delia said regarding the, you're going to start at a certain level, and as you train it, and this is where, your agents are dealing with these conversations on a daily basis. So it would be best for them to get involved. And as I said, with relative ease, over a very short period of time, you're going to move from the 60% bracket up to the high 80s and into the 90s on automation. So, it's very doable. As I said, I'm going to say with relative ease. There is a bit of work involved, but it is relatively easy.
Just to add to that, Mark, what most people are actually doing on that is, as Delia showed there, you have the ones that were scored as yes, as no, again, whatever the intent you're looking for are, but it also shows you all the ones that it couldn't match, it wasn't sure about, those fallback ones. So what most companies are doing is they're looking through those at the end of the day or first thing the next morning, and somebody's going through them and repointing the ones that were wrong and pointing the ones that it didn't understand. That is it. It could be a 10, 15, 20-minute process for the first few weeks as you get more of them that it isn't understanding, and as that cuts down to a couple of minutes, a day maximum, and then towards the end it becomes nothing, not required. But it's a very simple process, takes a very small amount of time each day.
Okay, thanks, Graham. And the next question here comes in from Dawn. Does my client data get passed to Google Dialogflow?
Yeah, so the data doesn't get passed across to Dialogflow. As I was shown there in the training, the only thing that gets passed across is the content of the response. So that will be passed across, but all of the personal information that you upload against your contacts remains securely within the Webio platform.
Great, thanks, Delia. What happens if someone keeps answering with very random responses? And that's from John.
I better take that because I am Mr. Random Response at the best of times. We've touched on this already, that I'm going to sort of echo what Graham has just said with regards to that end of day training. That it could be that it just needs to be pointed to go in the right direction, or it could be that it just defaults to the agent queue. So really depending on how random it is, or what exactly the response is, you're either going to look to automate those in the future, or you're going to get them handled by an agent. So no matter what happens, there is going to be a good customer experience on the back of it to deliver the right type of result as efficiently as possible.
Cheers, Mark. I'm very conscious of the time, so we're just going to wrap up with this final question here from Martin. Do you tell someone that they are engaging with a bot or not?
Good question. It's an interesting one. There are different opinions, different views on this, but the majority view is yes, you do when you can. And the reason for that being, what we see is if somebody knows they're talking to a bot, they're actually more forgiving the way they type and what it can give them back. So if it asks a question as a bot, someone will do much clearer English generally than if they think they're speaking to a human. So take away the little colloquialisms and that sort of thing, which makes it much easier for the dialogue flow to get it right more often at the beginning. So our thought process is yes, you should where you can.
Great. Thanks there, Graham. Okay, guys, we have come to the end of the session. As always, I hope you found it informative and were able to get a little bit more insight into just how easy customer automation can be. As we said earlier in the session, lots of people think it's hard and difficult. So hopefully, there from Delia's demo, you'll get a good idea of just how easy it is to implement customer engagement automation. So all that's left for me to do today is to thank you for joining us again. Just a reminder, if you think of any other questions after the session, as Mark had said, contact us at info@webio.com. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions or to explain a little bit more detail and answer questions that are specific to your organisation and how you engage with your customers at the moment. So again, everybody, thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again on a future session. Have a great day and goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.